Fastway.
Hi, I'm Dave with Fastway Trailer Products. Today our video is going to focus on the install of our E2 Trunnion 4.5K hitch. Now that's 450 pounds of tongue weight or a 4,500 pound gross trailer weight. The E2 hitch is a great option, especially over using just a typical ball mount or an old-fashioned chain style hitch that you have to use add-on sway control to get any sway control from, because the E2 hitch has the sway control all built right into the hitch itself. As soon as you hitch up and couple it up, the sway control is in force. There's nothing extra that you have to worry about or hassle with. With a ball mount, you don't get any weight distribution or any sway control. And with an old standard chain style hitch, there's a lot of hassle with the add-ons to get them to work, and especially to store them. When you have a small trailer like this, storage space is a real premium, so you don't want to have anything extra that you got to store. With that, let's get started with the install. The first thing to do, let's take a look at what you get in the box. This is our Trunnion hitch head. It's small, light duty, you can see. You get a snap up lever. This is to help you get the spring arms up onto the L brackets if you ever need a little extra lift. Of course, back here you have your typical Trunnion spring arms. Now these have a section that's bare here at the back. Those are what rides on the L brackets, and that's where you get your built-in sway control. Two of those. Over here is the hardware pack, and inside that is the instruction manual, the owner's manual. Now make sure that you take that out and read through it first before you get started, so that you're familiar with what to do all the way through. Then go back and follow it step by step as you install the hitch. When you're done, keep that in a safe place, and then as you use your hitch, you can go back to it and use it as a reference to make adjustments if you need to, and for the regular scheduled maintenance, the typical maintenance that you need to keep the hitch in good working order. Those are also in the owner's manual, so make sure you use that. These pieces here are called the L brackets. These are the brackets to hold the arms up as you're traveling, that give you the weight distribution. It also comes with a set of link plates. These are the outside link plates that go on the outside of the trailer frame. These hold the L brackets in place. And these are the inside link plates that catch the bolts on the other side of the frame. And of course you get an adjustable shank. Now this one can be used either in the drop position or in the rise position, depending on the height that you need to get your hitch head, and we'll show you that in a minute. Here's the tools that you're going to need for the installation. You're going to need two 3/4 inch wrenches, probably a socket and an open air or combination wrench. You're going to need a 5/8 socket, 9/16 wrench, and a 9/16 socket as well. A nice big socket bar would be useful. You're going to need a torque wrench that's capable of at least 90 foot-pounds for your shank bolts, and if you're going to install the hitch ball by yourself, you're going to need one that reaches whatever your hitch ball recommendation is. In this case, ours is 250 foot-pounds, and to do that you're going to need usually an 1 3/4 socket to be able to torque that hitch ball down. Get yourself a pencil so that you can mark down the measurements. Of course, follow your instruction, your owner's manual. You're going to need a tape measure to check the heights, and that'll do it. Now, a couple of other notes. Try to make sure that you've got your tow vehicle and your trailer loaded just about the way that they would be set up when you're going to go and use them. That means full of gas, full water tanks or empty water tanks, however you start off. Make sure that you've got your propane full, all of those kinds of things. That will help you get the best hitch setup that you can get up front. Now, sometimes we know that that's not possible. If that's the case, just do the best you can. You might have to estimate a little bit. Then as you get to a situation where you can do that with it all loaded up, make some adjustments if you need to. The adjustments on the E2 hitches are really easy to do. Another thing that you should be aware of is the auto leveling systems. If you can on your tow vehicle, make sure that that's turned off so that those don't engage as you're setting up the hitch. You might need to pull out the fuse to do that. And another thing is, if your tow vehicle is equipped with the manual inflatable airbags, you want to inflate those to whatever pressure you like to tow with as you're towing before you set the hitch up. If you set the weight distribution up and then inflate the airbags once in a while, that can reduce some of the sway control and some of the weight distribution that you're getting. So make sure that your airbags are full to the way that you like them before you set the hitch up. Our first step is to install the hitch ball. You can do this by putting the shank into your receiver, putting the hitch pin in temporarily just to hold it. Now you want to take the hitch head and place it upside down on the shank. That gives you access to where you're going to need to get to tighten up the nut. And in this case, you just need to hold it in place temporarily there while you torque it down. Now, the hitch ball doesn't come with the E2 hitch, so you need to pick that up separately. This one is a 2-inch hitch ball that matches the coupler on our trailer. Make sure that you get the right size for your coupler, and make sure that this has a 1-inch threaded shank down here. That's the size of the hole in the hitch head. If you get a smaller one than that, make sure that you have the spacer that needs to go in there to take up that space so that you get a nice tight fit and keep that tight and keep you safe. Our specs recommend 250 foot-pounds to torque this down, so we're just going to slide that up through. The split washer almost always goes against the nut, and that's the instructions on our hitch ball in this case. So you put that in place like that, set your torque wrench to the correct torque, and then tighten that hitch ball down. Our next step is to make sure that we have the tow vehicle and the trailer lined up in a straight line with each other. And you also want to be on a nice flat piece of ground, either on a nice driveway or in a parking lot somewhere, nothing that's on a slant or with a bunch of waves in it. That'll make sure that you get the weight distribution set up the best possible setting that you can get it to. Now, in this trailer, which is an R-Pod, that comes with our Fastway flip already pre-installed as a factory option. And we love it because it saves you about 50 cranks both up and down. It tucks itself up and puts itself away. You don't have the hassle of kneeling down and a bunch of extra wood blocks. That's a great feature and advantage that you get with the flip. If you don't happen to have a trailer that came with it from the factory, you can buy one that's aftermarket, and it's a pretty quick and simple install. You can do it yourself in most cases. So to get my trailer level now is the next step. That makes it sure that when I have my weight distribution set up, I'm towing the trailer parallel and level to the ground. That gives me the clearance that I need. The way that I like to do that is to measure the frame at the front of the trailer and at the back of the trailer to the same spot on the frame. When those measurements are equal, my trailer's parallel to the ground. Our next step is to set the hitch head at the correct height. And that means that you want the hitch ball to be set right at the same height as the coupler on your trailer when your trailer is parallel to the ground. So the first thing we need to do is take this measurement here and see what that is. And I'm getting about 20.5 for the coupler height here. Now, put your shank in your receiver. We're going to look. 20.5 hits us right about here, so I think I can reach that in the drop position. You might need to flip it over and use yours in the rise position, or you might need a specialty shank if there's a significant difference to accomplish that distance. We have those available. You can get those from your dealership. This shank will handle almost all of the installations that you need. So I'm going to start off in our drop position. Now, we measured our tongue weight earlier, and our tongue weight is right at just close to the 450 pound limit. In that case, I'm going to use 3 of the spacer washers in my hitch head. If it was less than 350 pounds, I would start with only 2 spacer washers, set the weight distribution up, and check that. I might need to make some adjustments. Ours is at the top end of the hitch range, so I'm going to start with our 3 spacer washers and our spacer rivet. Temporarily pin your shank in place just to hold it while you're tightening down the bolts. The spacer washers go here in this area of the hitch head, right in the hole in the back there. Now, I'm going to take a shank bolt and then put it through the bottom hole here. And then I'm going to check this height. I'll lift it up to where my spacer washers are touching, and I'm slightly above 20.5, but I don't really want to drop it because I'm going to be too low. So I'm going to try this setup to start with, and I may need to make some adjustments and drop it a hole later. We'll check that later on in the video. When you're mounting your hitch head here, this is kind of a unique situation. The bottom bolt in this case doesn't use any washers. So you just put the bolt in place and then you put the nut on the back side. The top bolt, on the other hand, does have these washers. Now these washers are coned. They are kind of, if you set them on a table, they'd be like a miniature volcano. That needs to face out towards either the bolt head or in on the other side towards the nut head, so that those cones flatten out and pinch the shank channel here, the bolt channel, tight to the shank as you tighten it down. So make sure that you get your washers on the right orientation, lift that into place, and then finger tighten the nut on the other side. Once you get to this point, you want to unpin it and flip the whole setup over. Now the weight of the hitch head is pulling that spacer washers tight to the shank, and now you go ahead and use your wrenches to tighten it down. You want to initially tighten these bolts so that it pinches in and holds the hitch head in the right place as you're going to flip it over later to set up your weight distribution. Then at the very end of the setup, you're going to use the torque wrench, torque those down to 90 foot-pounds, and that'll be your final tightening. But in case we need to make some adjustments and movements, we're not going to tighten them all the way down right now. We're just going to snug them up so that it'll hold this into place. Our next step is to set the sway brackets up on the trailer frame. That's the part that holds your spring arms up and gives you the weight distribution and also the sway control back on the L bracket. So in this case, we want the placement of these brackets to be between 25 and 30 inches from the center of the coupler or center of the hitch ball here. In this case, we're great. 30 inches is ideal. We've got that right here, and there's nothing in the way. Make sure that you check for an obstruction like wiring or a battery rails or something like that. That's one of the really nice features about the E2 hitch, is you have a flexible placement of the brackets. You can go forward to 25 all the way back to 30 if you need to, and that lets you move around those things instead of having to move them to accommodate for your hitch. A great benefit of the E2 hitches. Now let me show you the link plates. These are the parts that go around the frame. You can see here there's 5 holes, 2 at the top, 3 at the bottom. These are made to accommodate everything from a 2.5 inch frame up to a 5 inch frame. The way that you would do that is these 2 holes here are your 2.5. Move it up to here is 3, 3.5, and so on. So our next step is to bolt those around the frame here. You're going to need your wrenches. In this case, our bolts are the smaller ones. So this is a 9/16 wrench. These can be mounted the right side up, which would be these holes on the top, or they could be mounted upside down. Now that would change depending on if you have a top mount coupler or a bottom mount coupler. In the case that this one here is a top mount coupler, so our outside link plate would be up like this. If this were a bottom mount coupler, you might want to install it upside down to get those studs a little bit lower. That makes it so that there's a little less stress on the L bracket. If you find that you have an install where you're having to put that L bracket way down low, you could also flip these over and run them upside down to shorten that distance a little bit. That's an option. So when I set these up, we'll figure out what our frame height is here, 4 inches. So we're going to be using the top hole here and then this hole here. We want to make sure that those fit nice and tight to the frame. You don't want it down here, leave yourself any gap there at all, but a nice tight fit to the frame. Make sure that those holes match up as you put them together, Now you just want to drop those over the top of the trailer where your mark was. Put the split washer on the back, thread the nut on just a turn or two. Now your bottom bolt into place. And the same process. Now as you tighten those nuts down, make sure that these are perpendicular to the trailer frame and pinch them tight here so that they don't get installed on a little bit of an angle. So snug them down finger tight first, then use your wrenches to tighten them up the rest of the way. Now we'll put them on temporarily here and we'll tighten them down in the final tightening at the end. Next is the placement of the L bracket. I usually like to start off in about the middle right here. So that you got two holes empty above and below and then the two studs in the middle. This is a nylock nut. It threads on here. And so tighten those down. For that you're going to want your 5/8 socket or wrench. Once you get that all together, do the other side and we'll be ready to put the spring arms together. For our spring arms, the first thing that we need to do is put a little bit of grease on the hitch head and on the pins that hold the arms in place. So you don't need a lot, just a little touch. You want to grease this surface underneath here and here where those trunnions are going to ride. Just a fine film is plenty. And then you want to put a little bit on these pins that hold the spring arms into place. Any good multi-purpose grease will work fine for this. Okay, once you have that done, I'm going to take the spring arm. You're going to install this with the bare metal part down so that you get your friction sway control. The arm is going to be angled down a little bit like that. The sticker on the top. And slide that between the plates here. And then put the pin in place and you're going to put your clip in to retain that and then wipe off any of the excess grease that you have at the bottom. Now we'll do the other side. The first step in setting up our weight distribution is to take an initial measurement. This needs to be done with the tow vehicle backed up underneath the coupler, but not coupled at all so that there's no weight on the tow vehicle. And the first measurement we take is at the front wheel well. One trick that one of our viewers showed us is to put a little piece of blue painter's tape. That gives us a nice crisp line to measure to. And that's a great tip, by the way. So the first thing we're going to do is measure right here up through the front axle, and we're getting 34 inches. That will go on line A of the weight distribution setup chart. Our second set of measurements needs to come with the coupler and all of the tongue weight down on the top of the hitch, but no weight distribution engaged. So you can see all of the weight is resting here on the tow vehicle. Now we're going to take our second set of measurements up at the front axle. Now we should see that the front of the tow vehicle has come up. And we're getting about 34 3/4 inches. So that will go on line B of your weight distribution setup chart. Now that measurement translates into what's actually happening, and that is that we're losing weight off of our front axle. So now we've lost some steering control and we've lost some braking control, and that's why it's really important to use a weight distribution hitch like the E2. Let's go take our third measurement. For our third measurement, we want to engage the spring arms. The easiest way to do that is to leave the coupler latched Raise both the tow vehicle and the trailer up till you can slide the spring arms over the L brackets, and then lower the weight back down, this time engaging the spring arms and putting the weight distribution into effect. Now we need to take our third measurement. For our third measurement, we're getting 33.5. Ideally, we're looking to get back to the 34-inch mark, or at least halfway back from the 34 3/4, which would have given us 34 3/8. So if we're following our setup chart, we want to be at least halfway back, and you can go even all the way back to your initial measurement is all right as well. Being over distributed in this case means that we have too much weight distribution. We're pushing too much force down on the front axle, and that has a tendency to actually lift weight off the rear axle. That can be kind of a dangerous situation. Under distributed would mean you don't have enough weight back on the front axle. You're not getting the performance that you could get out of your hitch as far as better braking and better steering. So because we're over distributed, we're going to go and adjust the hitch head and the L brackets and try to get that back to a better setup. And we made a couple of adjustments here. We were quite over distributed, so I ended up taking one of the spacer washers out of the hitch head, and we've also dropped the L bracket one hole. Now that's a little bit unusual in my experience, but every trailer and tow vehicle is different, so you might need to make a few adjustments to get yours dialed in, but it's worth it. It's not too much work, and it makes it so that you have a better and a safer tow. So let's check our measurement and see how we've done. Well, that's much better. We're all the way down to 34 inches. So we only needed to get halfway back. We've gone all the way back, and that's really premium weight distribution. That's really good. So I think we're set up and ready to tow. We'll do the last couple of steps now. Our next step is to check the pitch of the trailer. We don't want that to be tilted too far up or too far down, so that we get a nice level tow. That'll reduce some of the wind resistance and the drag, get a little better fuel mileage, and you'll handle it a little bit better. So I've checked the back. We're at 16 inches on both ends when we initially leveled the trailer. That one's at 16 1/4 down there. I'm expecting this one to be pretty good. It is just below 16 inches. That's well within the 1 1/4 tolerance that we want to have. So the pitch of the trailer is good, the weight distribution is good. Now we just need to tighten things up. Now we have our weight distribution set up well. We've checked the pitch on our trailer, so it's towing nice and parallel to the ground. The next step is the final tightening. So to do that, we need to pull the tow vehicle forward so we have some space to work. Now we're going to take our hitch, unpin it, and flip it over. That makes sure that it's pulling the weight down to the right place. And now we're going to use our torque wrench and our 3/4 wrench and get it to that 90 foot-pounds of torque. You want to double check and make sure that your conical washers here are flat and they've been smashed down tightly. And if you get it to the 90 foot-pounds, you should be fine doing that. For the final tightening on the sway bracket, you want to torque the link plates down to between 25 and 30 foot-pounds, and then you want about 45 foot-pounds out here for the L brackets. Our hitch is set up, we've got it all tightened down, and we're ready to take it out for a test tow. Make sure that you've got your safety chains in place, hook up your wiring harness, and couple your breakaway cable up. That's a fancy little attachment that we make called the zip. That one coiled up so it won't drag on the ground and get frayed and broken. That's a sweet little accessory. Everything else is ready to go. We're going to take it out for a drive. Thanks for taking some time to watch with us today. If you like our videos, make sure that you subscribe to the channel so that you can get updates of the future videos that we post, and you can go back and see all the ones that we've done in the past. We've got some great videos on a lot of great topics to help you with your hitches and other trailer accessories and towing your trailer. You can also find us on our social media pages and like us there, join the conversation and share your experience, as well as be included in some great giveaways for some awesome prizes. Thanks for watching.
Life in the back. Fastway.
Weight distribution, some of your steering and braking control. Oh, come on, Dave. Choke. The first thing that you need to do is put a little bit of grease on the head and on these pins. This grease is not open, so we're not going to use that. Total mind blank. What am I starting with? Pin it into place. Shoot, where did my mind just like vanished on me? Sorry. And your smaller trailers. Those, dang it. Don't stop talking. Just stop talking. You tell me to shut up.